Good morning and welcome to the inaugural episode of Amargão Futebol Kickoff. My name is Sean Miller, aka The Genius, and I am coming to you from the Big 8, Sports Talk Florida, Capital Sports Network, all over social media and anywhere else you can listen to this show. And, you heard the intro. We're going to talk a lot of Premier League. We're going to talk a little bit about some championships, all kinds of English football. If you want to call it soccer, call it soccer. I call it football, but, you call it whatever you'd like. And we're going to be here every Saturday morning prior to the early kickoff, the 7:30 kickoff, which kicks off here in about half an hour. Massive game early. There's some big games this weekend. We'll get to those, specifically Sunday. But this, Aston Villa Newcastle match to start the weekend here is massive. Obviously, Newcastle turmoil at this point. Maybe they're going to sign somebody that isn't, that doesn't end up going to Manchester United at some point here. But Aston Villa, obviously, maybe one of their players they're going, but. We've already had a big game in the league, and we've actually had a massive game already involving a Premier League team, the UEFA Super Cup. We'll get to that result in a little bit. I was at the Europa League final in Bilbao. I'm a Manchester United fan, so it was basically an awful result for me, especially when you look at this, the way that Super Cup turned out. It's always interesting how those Champions League teams, they may end up getting a result, but it's never hard, or it's never easy as it is. They do it the hard way. We'll get to that as well. But first, let me just kind of introduce myself if you don't know who I am. Obviously, people that are listening, on the X, I call it Twitter, and all over the place will probably know me from a long time ago. I've been covering the Premier League since 2013. I did it for 10 years for NG.com. I had a show on ESPN in New York for 2 years. We did all kinds of different soccer stuff, football stuff, whatever you want to call it. And, now basically editor-in-chief for Sports Talk Florida and all the sports talk sites. Thank you, my guy, Bruce Midori, giving me this platform. Sports Talk United, which is our www.sportstalkunited.com. If you're a big fan of this sport, please head over there and check it out. Sports Talk Florida, part of the Sports Talk Network, sites all over the place. But listen, we have social media everywhere. We have TikTok. We have X, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. You could find us all over the place. So, and we're going to have some guests on, weekly whenever we get some names you'll know, some names you won't. But hopefully as they come on, you'll start to get to know them. But today, solo show for the opener. And, we're just going to get right into these games because there's a lot of, once again, interesting games here. This Aston Villa Newcastle, look, it's, wanted to get this out of the way first because it kicks off here, if you're listening, in about 25 minutes. I just, Aston Villa now, a little bit of a state of flux. Lone players left. Some players we still don't know. Emi Martinez. Evan Guassan came in. Newcastle, look, they tried to sign everybody. So, and their brothers so far. They tried to sign Mateus Cunha, Brian Mbuemo, Benjamin Sesko. We all know they ended up at Manchester United. Newcastle, by the end of the window, according to all reports, is going to sign a lot of players. I just, when you look at how this Premier League is shaping up, right now, the Premier League, when they're advertising it as, maybe the best league ever. I think you could make an argument that there's probably, 5 teams that can win it. I'm going to go through these teams and give you a reason why I think they can and they can't. Obviously, Liverpool played yesterday. They won it last year. They're signing everyone. They're still going to sign some more people. It looks like they are loaded. Didn't look great in the Community Shield. Congratulations, Crystal Palace, by the way, beating Manchester City in the final and the FA Cup final, and then beating Liverpool in the Community Shield. That's a great way to win your first 2 trophies in forever. But Liverpool won the title. Everyone thinks they're the favorites. I'm not sure about that. At this point, I'm going to give you reasons why maybe they can and they can't. For me, I would say they're not my favorites. We can talk about Arsenal finish second. I think Arsenal is going to take a huge step back. I think they're an injury away. I don't know how much depth they have. I think they're going to struggle in some of these other competitions. I know they made the semifinals of the Champions League last year. Then they had to watch all these other London clubs win trophies all spring and summer. And, since the start of the season, had to watch those 2 of those same, or really 3 of those same London clubs win big trophies again. So I'm not sold on Arsenal. I think, depending on some signings, I think there's a chance they finish 4th or 5th. I'm not sold on Arsenal at all. I think they have some weaknesses. I just think there's better teams than them. When you look at these teams personally, right now, after watching them play all summer and watching what they did, I would actually, if I was a betting person, which I am, I would actually make Chelsea the favorites at this point. People might say I'm a little bit crazy about that. Chelsea or 115. I think you could make 115 the favorites. If you're not sure who that is, that would be Manchester City with their 115 charges hanging over them, even though they're spending money like crazy. Still 115 charges hanging over their heads for the last forever. And we'll see still some charges to come, possibly for the years 2018 to 2024. Manchester City and Chelsea, I think, are the 2 teams that have the best 2 chances to win it. I think Liverpool takes a little bit of a step back. I think they're going to be right in it, the whole season. But just the way these teams play, I just, Chelsea's got so much depth. City's got so much depth. Not that Liverpool doesn't. And once again, if Liverpool gets some of these other players, Isak, whoever, that clearly could change. But Manchester City is loaded. It's amazing what happens when you can just spend money as much as you want for 15 years. But I like this Chelsea team. You watched them win the Europa Conference League. Obviously they were going to win that. They were by far the best team in that. But I'm not sure anybody thought they were going to go when they weren't going to win the Club World Cup, and they did it impressively in the final. Really, the whole way through. I mean, that side of the bracket was really weak. I think a lot of people thought Manchester City would get there, play Chelsea in the semifinal, beat them, and get to the final. I thought PSG was going to win it after the destruction of Inter in the Champions League final. But, Chelsea came through. Chelsea has signed a lot of players and sold a lot of players. That's what they do. Liam Delap comes in. He's not even first choice striker at this point. João Pedro scores the goals in the final and the semifinal to get them the Club World Cup. He's very good, but it's a long season, and Delap will score some goals. Hopefully, they sign Garnacho and some of these other people, so Manchester United can sign who they need to sign. But listen, this team is really, really deep, and I like the way they play. If they play the way they did in the final 2 months of the season, they had that lull in the middle, and that's going to be the issue, I think, with all these teams. I don't think anyone's running away with this league. I think the points total is going to be down this year from last year because there's too many competitive games. Even the teams at the bottom of the table are good, or competitive. Some of the teams coming up, and we'll get to that in the second part of this. But when you talk about Newcastle and one of these teams that's in the Champions League and finished top 5 last year, they're playing in a couple minutes. Aston Villa, who's in Europe, I think both of these teams could fall down the pecking order depending on how much players they sign, how many players they sign, how much money they spend in the next couple weeks. Newcastle is going to spend some money in the coming weeks. They have to, or you get left behind in this league. Manchester United is going to spend some more money. Chelsea is going to spend some more money. City is going to spend some more money. Liverpool is going to spend money. You're going to have to do that to be able to compete right now. Newcastle, there's no way that they're going to be able to compete with these teams that they don't spend any money. And honestly, if they lose Isak, I don't think there's any way they could do that anyway. So, I started to talk about Manchester City a little bit. Obviously De Bruyne is gone. Ryan Aït-Nouri is in at left back. Ryan Cherki is in. Tijani Rangers is in. Very good players. Some players, James Trafford's in, and we got Duke Donnarumma maybe coming in here. Obviously to start. I don't know what Trafford's thinking at this point, but City, for me, if you had to pin me down right now, I would say the clear top 3 is City, Chelsea, Arsenal in some order. 4, and this is depending upon signings, Manchester United, depending upon their midfield and goalkeeper signings. I think if Baleba or Stiller or a goalkeeper, Lamens, comes in, they need a midfielder. I think United finishes 4, 5, 6. I think the next teams are Arsenal, United. I want to see what Newcastle does. The Premier League is definitely getting 5 teams in Champions League again. They have 9 teams in Europe at this point. So, they're definitely going to be competing there. So, as for this game in a couple minutes, it's interesting with the odds right now. just going to take a look and see what they have for this game. And, if you're a betting person, make sure you follow my guy, Pedro, on, and we'll talk about the EFL Cup draw and all this other stuff as well in the second part of the show here after the break, before this game kicks off here. Aston Villa's at home. They're plus 135, plus 140. Newcastle plus 190. I would actually give the preference here a little bit. I would kind of sway towards Villa, depending. I think there could be some goals in this game. I think it's going to be interesting. The main thing about this game is both of these teams have to sign players in the coming weeks. If they do not, they are going to struggle in Europe. They're going to struggle in the league specifically, because when you start to look at some of these match weeks, match week 2, there's not a break for these teams. Newcastle's got Liverpool match week 2 after playing at Villa. And then they got to go to Leeds, who people are saying are one of the team that might stay up because of the way that, their roster is set up. And then they got to, then they get a little bit of a break with Wolves, Bournemouth away. But, you got to remember Arsenal, that's their first 6 matches. There's not a lot of easy matches in this league anymore. And you got to remember Nottingham Forest, who's in Europa League. All these teams are going to be playing. There's 9 teams in Europe. So, you gotta remember all this stuff. Anyway, I think Aston Villa probably wins it, but we'll see. It's a great way to kick off the first weekend and my birthday weekend. Happy birthday. But we'll also kind of dive into after the break here, coming up in about 7 or 8 minutes. We're going to dive into the second, the schedule for match week 1. I'll go through it right now. So Liverpool played Bournemouth yesterday, obviously. Villa plays Newcastle and kicking off here in about 12 minutes. Brighton plays Fulham at 10. These are all Eastern time games. So if I say 10 Eastern, it's 10. Obviously, we're on at Tampa. So, I'm going to tell you Eastern time. But if you're listening somewhere else on the radio in England, big fans in Portugal, England, everywhere else, these are all Eastern time. Sunderland plays West Ham. Sunderland, who won the playoff last year, came up. A lot of buzz around them. Everybody's kind of happy to see them back. Or not everybody. I guess Newcastle fans aren't. Tottenham, who just played on Wednesday in Italy, Udine, Italy, and the Super Cup, has to play Burnley. They get a little bit of a break there after that tough game that went the distance. Wolves host Manchester City. Ryan Knight-Nori going home. Wolves are an interesting team a little bit. I think people, if one of these teams that stay up or one of these teams that came up stays up, people might think that Wolves could be one that could struggle after last year. They played well when they changed managers. However, you lose Mateus Cunha, Ryan Knight-Nori. You could struggle a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see just how well they are able to replace some of these players. That's the 12:30 kickoff today. Sunday, man, what a fantastic day of games. Chelsea hosts Crystal Palace at 9. Crystal Palace coming off their Community Shield win. Chelsea coming off their Club World Cup win. The pride of London. Both those teams have passed Arsenal in the pecking order because Arsenal doesn't win trophies. I don't want to hear anything else about it. I don't care if Arsenal comes in second every year and does this stuff. They don't win trophies. and the club culture there's we're not gonna get into that too much because some dodginess. Nottingham Forest, who's in Europe, got moved up to the Europa League from the Conference League because of the Crystal Palace UEFA ruling. Crystal Palace is in the Conference League now because of the dual club ownership rule. Nottingham Forest will play Brentford. Once again, Brentford, another team that could struggle. We'll see. I think they've overachieved. Thomas Frank left to go to Tottenham. So that could be interesting. The huge game of the day for me and for many people, Manchester United hosts Arsenal. Arsenal spent the first half of the summer chasing Benjamin Sesko and instead went for Victor Gyökeres, who used to play for Ruben Amorim, the manager of Manchester United. And then Manchester United ended up signing Sesko for a lower price than Arsenal was quoted because Manchester United is a special club. Special club. There's only a few of those. Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Liverpool. I think maybe you could argue, somebody else, but that's it. And then on Monday we have Leeds United Everton. So quickly here before we get to the break, in the last couple minutes, I want to kind of discuss the end of the bottom of the table. Last year was not a good one for promoted teams. It was, Southampton was relegated basically in January. Basically, what I'm trying to say is we knew who was going down in February, January. The fact that Tottenham finished, 17th and Manchester United finished 15th and played in the Europa League final. Tottenham was one spot above the relegation on 38 points and is playing in the Champions League because they won the Europa League. And what was the worst game I've ever seen, to be honest with you, if we're going to be honest. It was terrible. But Ipswich Town and Leicester City both relegated. 25 points, 22 points, 12 points. Southampton almost battered Derby County's 2007-2008 record of 10 points. They were terrible. 2 wins. Leicester City, Ipswich, and Southampton had 12 wins in 76, 114 matches. That's embarrassing. It's less than that because they play each other, but you get the picture. Embarrassing. However, when you look at this year, I think it's going to be a little bit different. I'm not sure, that Leeds, Sunderland, and Burnley are all three going to go back down. I think one of them stays up. Leeds probably the best chance to do so with their roster and the players they're signing, their squad as it is. I think Wolves could be in a little bit of trouble. People are talking about West Ham. I think they'll be all right. They'll sign enough players. It's a great stadium. People pan it all the time. I actually like going to that stadium, so I don't know, whatever. I think, obviously Palace will be fine. Bournemouth, we'll see. They lost some defenders. Hudson was big. We'll see if he gets replaced. I think Brentford, if they get off to a little bit of a slow start, could be interesting. Everton's going to be better. Obviously, they were better at the end of last year. Fulham will be all right. Brighton's always good. Brentford could be interesting. Bournemouth could be interesting. And then Sunderland, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley. Of those three, if you had to pin me down today, if you want me to make a prediction, I say Wolves go down, I say Sunderland goes down, and I say Burnley goes down, not in that order. And we will start talking about Europe and some of these other things in a moment when we return. This is Amargão Football, Sean Miller, and we are going to be here every weekend for your Premier League kickoff on Amargão Football Kickoff on AM 820, the Big 8, Sports Talk Florida, Capital Sports Network, and wherever else you can hear us. We'll be right back.